In 2019, while on a business trip to Seattle, I had the opportunity to visit Wild Waves Theme and Water Park. Wild Waves is a small park on the southern side of Seattle, not far away from the airport. This is the only traditional park in the region, although the Washington State Fair is open for several weeks as well, and offers Seattle residents a coaster alternative when it's operating. Unfortunately for me, my trip didn't overlap with the fair, so Wild Waves was it for me when it came to coaster riding on this trip. My visit to Wild Waves started around 5 o'clock after I completed work for the day. My efforts to find the park entrance really set the tone for the rest of my visit. I ended up driving around in circles several times before I found the entrance to the parking lot. Upon making my way into the mostly empty parking lot, I was confronted with a $15 parking fee, and the $25 discounted after 5 entry price brought my total into $40 just to get in the door. This visit wasn't off to a great start. Upon entering the park, I discovered that guests need to walk through the water park to access the dry park. Nothing makes you feel quite as creepy as being a fully clothed 30-something-year-old man walking alone through a water park where teenagers in swimsuits are running around everywhere. I finally made it through the water park and into the dry park. The first thing I did is head to Wild Thing, the park's Aero Looper. This coaster is a pretty typical Aero with a single vertical loop and a double corkscrew. The one memorable thing about this coaster is actually that they send it around for 2 circuits with each ride cycle. Despite the fact that the park was virtually empty and was a station wait, the ride ops are rechecking the restraints with every cycle in between the 2 laps, as well as a very slow loading process, and it resulted in the station wait being a 30-minute wait to ride this, so I only took the 1 spin on it. Overall, Wild Thing actually is one of the smoother Aero Loopers I've been on. I'd mark it significantly better than its sisters at Valley Fair or Cedar Point. After my ride on Wild Thing, I decided to go find Timberhawk, Bride of Prey, the park's S&S Woody. This coaster is my primary reason for wanting to visit this park, as the S&S wooden coasters are fairly rare, and it looked like fun, and I had not been able to experience a ride like this previously. After wandering around the park for a while, I found Timberhawk and took a few laps on it. Timberhawk uses PTC trains with ratcheting lap bars and offers a very smooth ride for a Woody. Unfortunately, the smooth ride is really the most memorable part about Timberhawk. The ride was slow, it had very few memorable moments, no major drops, no significant airtime, no strong forces. Honestly, Timberhawk may be the most forgettable Woody I've ever experienced. After my rides on Timberhawk, I explored the park for a while. The park is a small lake separating the dry park from the water park, and has lots of trees and rough terrain throughout the dry park. The hilly terrain has many paths winding all throughout it, and it's kind of easy to get lost. There's not a whole lot of theming at this park. I know the park's name says it's a theme park, but I would certainly consider it to be an amusement park, as opposed to a theme park. The park has a nice kids area, and the park's third coaster, a Zamperla Wild Mouse named Klondike Gold Rush, can be found at the back corner of this area. Unfortunately, this ride was not operating during my visit, so I missed out on this credit. I've heard that this ride rarely operates, so I shouldn't have been surprised to miss it. The park has several adult flats, including a disco and a very old Larson loop. There's also a nice-looking sky coaster that swings out over the lake. Like most sky coasters, it's an upcharge attraction. There's a plaza between the wet and dry parks with limited food options. I was getting hungry, so I stopped by to see what I could find to eat. When I got in line for the food, I could not help but notice that the food stand was filthy. The tables were sticky, the trash cans were overflowing, and the whole area smelled bad. The park employee working the food stand was paying more attention to her phone than she was the customers in line, and even once she finally took my order, it took her almost 10 minutes to prepare a plate of nachos and a soda. The nachos are cold by the time I ate them, and like everything else in this park, was overpriced. I hate to be negative, but my day at Wild Waves was honestly my least favorite park day in 2019. I ended up spending an average of $25 per new credit on this trip, and left the park feeling like I should have found something else to do with my night off. Later that year, while on another business trip, I had a conversation with a coworker who grew up in the Seattle area. Her comment to me, when she found out that I visited Wild Waves, was, "Why would you subject yourself to that place?" I also want to give a special thanks to Airtime Thrills for sharing his raw footage with the YouTube community. My visit to Wild Waves occurred before this channel existed, and without his footage, this video simply would not have been possible. If you don't already subscribe to Airtime Thrills, be sure to do so, as he produces some of the most consistently excellent content in the YouTube roller coaster community. If you enjoyed this video, please consider clicking on the subscribe button to join us for future adventures. Until then, ride on, coaster fans.